I'm the boss. It's my way and no other way. End of story, you know?
I got a little crazy and I overstepped my bounds. It's not the first time, and hopefully that's the last time I'll ever do that. There's never, ever an excuse for a guy to put his hands on a woman. There's no defense for this, and people should not be defending me over this thing, no matter what.
What do you not understand about that?
Well, I can't believe that there are people online, that there are fans, fighters, pundits, if you want to call that, defending Dana Whiting to defend striking your spouse. What? What kind of fucking crazy world are we living in?
How concerning is this for you about like kind of the integrity, not only of this organization, but as the sport as a whole?
Zero.
It's like, how often do you partake in this?
Oh, I bet every single card, just about every fight.
They're gonna go to fucking federal prison. Federal fucking prison.
So some shit might come out that maybe other fighters involved, maybe other coaches involved.
The UFC has a big problem. After UFC 285, Jones versus Gain, it became apparent that the UFC has a massive problem with its heavyweight and light heavyweight divisions. With the departure of former heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou,
Francis is a big old pussy.
Hopefully he end up being satisfied with whatever he has, that changed his mind. I don't have a time to spend on like drama. I just have a beautiful future ahead of me.
It seems that the UFC has opened up the floodgates for their big athletic men to go on to other more well-paying sports, which only serves to make the few good big guys that remain stand out among lackluster fights in a lackluster division. I mean, over the course of the history of the UFC, the heavyweight championship has changed hands over 23 times, including this last UFC, which is way more than all the other divisions. Not to mention the recent gambling scandal centered around former fighter and coach James Krause.
James Krause, the suspended MMA coach who's at the center of an ongoing betting scandal in the UFC, has acted as an offshore bookmaking agent for multiple years.
Which has led to 2 UFC fighters being cut after the promotion banned all fighters from legally betting on fights.
There's an investigation going on. You think the people that are investigating call me and keep me in the loop on this?
Add on to this, how the outcry over Dana White's physical altercation with his wife from New Year's has seemingly been swept under the rug.
They have said, I shit you not, this is a major league sports organization telling reporters to refer to a TMZ article for further comment on the president of the company involved in something like this.
With no legal charges being filed, and UFC parent company Endeavor and ESPN strangely quiet in the aftermath.
If it was any other sports owner, any other executive, he would be raked over the coals. He would be, I mean, it would be completely different.
After so many comparisons to the NFL and NBA, if a similar situation had occurred with one of their executives, there would have been some type of punishment outside of only bad press. But Dana White didn't get so much as a slap on the wrist.
We treat this like they treat the NBA, MLB. And it's not okay for the UFC to be silent about it, and it's not okay for Endeavor to be silent about it, and none of it is okay.
And lastly, you know, through the never-ending talk about fighter pay, YouTube star turned pro boxer Jake Paul announced a 2-fight MMA deal under UFC competitor PFL.
The PFL, baby.
Launching a pay-per-view super fight division in which the fighters will receive at least 50% of the profits.
Our fighters will be receiving 50% of the revenue. A true 50-50 partnership with fighters that still allows them to be individuals and even monetize their own sponsorship deals, as we know isn't allowed in the UFC.
Putting the UFC on blast as it only pays its fighters just under 20% of overall revenue. And we don't know what they get as far as pay-per-view points.
I fought for pay-per-view points, right? Because that's where you start making that next wealth.
Did you get it?
No.
With the PFL co-founder Don Davis quoted as saying, "You're not a prisoner anymore to the UFC. You can now choose UFC or PFL, but what makes PFL different is we're coming out with a true economic partnership for fighters." So what are your guys' thoughts on this? Do you think the UFC can continue on the same path, or is it, destined for ruin?
Are you kidding me? If you want to know, and I'll never, ever, 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 ever get over this, what Dana White and the UFC truly think about domestic violence, look no further than January of 2019, the very first show on ESPN.